Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study call. We're continuing on with our study of Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. And we finished up chapter 3 yesterday. And so we'll be going into chapter 4. Just want to kind of do a quick recap. Excuse me. In yesterday's lesson, we talked about how there needs to be a mind to create out of this substance that is behind all things. Because if this substance that is feeling everything is of equal power to itself, then it couldn't create one thing here and nothing in another place. That there needs to be something, a mind or a creative power outside of that spirit, that power, that substance that is directing that substance to go from that spiritual plane into the physical world. And we also ended off with talking about how our minds, the minds that we have, are creative centers, and that they can use that same spirit, that same power that permeates and penetrates the entirety of the universe to create in our own physical world in the space that we operate. And we kind of talked about there are different levels that we can't influence and create the entire universe around us, but we can influence and create the life of what's in our own personal experience. All right, so let's jump into chapter 4, operation of your mental picture. The operation of a large telephone system may be used as a simile. The main or head central subdivides itself into many branch centrals, every branch being in direct connection with its source, and each individual branch recognizing the source of its existence, reports all things to its central head. Therefore, when assistance of any nature is required, new supplies, difficult repairs to be done, or whatnot, the branch in need goes at once to its central head. It would not think of referring its difficulties or its successes to the main central of a telegraph system, though they belong to the same organization. These different branch centrals know that the only remedy for any difficulty must come from the central out of which they were projected. Now, again, this book was written in 1920 or around thereabouts. And so she's using things like the telegraph and the telephone systems that, although they are similar in nature, meaning that they're both used to project information, to communicate, they're not on the same system. That the central branch, so to speak, of the telegraph is going to be different than the central branch of the telephone system. Now, in our day and age, we have the internet and cell phones. We don't really use telephones as much anymore, although in some cases there are, but most people use cell phones and the internet. And so you can kind of see that there are some similarities. If you're having problems with your internet, you're not going to go to your cell phone company unless, to be honest, your cell phone company is the one that you get your internet through, because some of the cell phone companies are moving that way. So that could be possible. But when you're having a problem, you don't go to somebody else that is not going to provide you with a solution. And I think one of the ideas that she's trying to bring out here and that she'll go into is the idea that when you have a problem, you don't go to somebody else to try to fix that problem. But instead, a more efficient course would be to go inside, to go back to the source from which all things are created and create anew from there. Now, you could go to somebody else for help in the sense of somebody's above you, somebody's farther advanced than you, to get wisdom, to get knowledge, to get understanding from them. But if you're just going to another person to complain, then it's not worth your time, really. My mentor, when he used to study with his mentor would tell him, you only get to explain the problem once, because in explaining the problem once, I can get an idea of what it is, but anything further than that is just complaining. And I really believe in that if we go around all day just regurgitating, vomiting on other people, all of our problems, it doesn't do them any good and it doesn't do us any good. Because on one hand, they're probably not equipped to be able to solve it. Or if they are, you tell them once and ask for their help. Now, I know that there's a lot of things out there about telling somebody so that you can get sympathy, so that you can be heard, so that you can have somebody on your side. And I think some of those are efficacious to some degree. But when you understand these laws, when you understand the real workings of what's going on, you actually find that by going out and regurgitating all the problems that are going on, you're recreating those problems anew. And so it'd be better to not keep expressing those ideas over and over again and recreating them every time that you're talking about them. But instead, what would be better is, okay, this is happening. Why am I choosing to have this experience? What can I do differently? What mental picture can I hold in my mind so that I can solve this problem? If we, as individual branches of the universal mind, would refer our difficulties in the same confident manner to the source from which we were projected and use the remedies that it has provided, we would realize what Jesus meant when he said, "Ask and ye shall receive." Our every equipment would be met. Surely the Father must supply the child. The trunk of the tree cannot fail to provide for its branches. Every animate or inanimate is called into existence or outstandingness by a power which itself does not stand out. The power that creates the mental picture, the originating spirit substance of your picture desire, does not stand out. It projects the substance of itself that is a solidified counterpart of itself, while it remains invisible to the physical eye. Only those will ever appreciate the value of visualizing who are able to realize Paul's meaning when he said, "The worlds were formed by the word of God. Things which are seen are not made of things which do appear." So let's break down some of that a little bit. So you have to get to the place and develop the faith that as you're creating, that you actually can create from this substance, and you do, whether you know it or not. I mean, if you don't know it, we often look at our lives as or that we're victims of our circumstances, but in reality, we're the ones that are creating it. Just as I said, you're going out around and regurgitating all your problems to everybody, you're recreating those problems over and over and over again. And until you stop that pattern and create something new in your mind, you won't see anything new in your outer environment. It all starts with the mental picture that you're holding in your mind. And then following up that mental picture with actions and emotions that support that same mental picture. Because if you're imagining in your mind things of prosperity, things of health, well, let's use that one for example, because I think it'll provide us with a good example. Say that you're visualizing things of health. Maybe you want to get in better shape and you hold that thought in your mind, but you don't go out and actually go to the gym. You don't actually go out and exercise. You're not going to make much progress. Now, this is actually an interesting thing. So I'll share this study here. You actually will make some progress. So they did a study where they broke a group of, I want to say it was a couple of thousand people. It might have been less than that. But they broke this group up into 3 different parts because they wanted to see how much just mentally picturing something can influence the body. So something that's a little bit ethereal in practice could affect the physical world around us, because these texts and stuff that we're studying say that it does. So they wanted to see if there was a concrete way to try to prove that. So they took this group of people, split it up into 3 groups. One group, they had visualize themselves going like this with their hand. And now one of the reasons why they chose this isn't a normal activity. Like, how many times during the day are you using this muscle to do something? So they wanted to choose a muscle that people aren't going to naturally be using, so that they can, actually measure it from people that are just using their mind. So the first group of people just imagined in their mind that they were going like this. They didn't actually physically do it. And they tested these people before they had them measurized. They put some kind of weight or something on there to see how much pounds or whatever that they could stretch that pinky out. And then they took the second group of people and they actually had them exercise that muscle for 15 minutes a day. That they would either do that. I'm not sure if they put some kind of band on there to give it a little bit of resistance, or whether they just, did this. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then the third group of people, they had them do nothing. They didn't visualize. They didn't, move their finger. They didn't even tell them what it was that, they were doing, so that they could have this control group. And they measured all these people before, see how much they could do. And then they measured them afterwards. And so at the end of, I think it was like a 2-month period of time. At the end of 2 months, they took the, group of people that did nothing. And of course, most of them had little to no improvement, because they weren't actually doing anything with that muscle at all. Now, the group that they had physically exercise it, they did see an improvement. I don't know to what degree, whether it was like double or triple the amount of what they could do before, but it was something that you could expect from exercising a muscle. It improved. But the people that only did it in their mind, they increased their capacity to do this, the strength of that muscle, by 33% of what the people that did it exercising did. So the power of your mind and visualizing does have power, but if you don't combine that with your physical action, you're only going to have a fraction of the results that you would have by mentally picturing it. And part of that mental picturing comes through this belief that she's talking about, because at some of the other parts in the scriptures, when it's talking about ask and ye shall receive, it also brings up the idea of belief, that you have to believe what you're asking for is going to come to you. Otherwise, you do no good in asking if you don't actually believe it, because in essence, what you're doing, if you doubt what's going to come about, you hold that feeling of doubt, what you're actually telling creation is that I don't actually want this, because I doubt that it's going to come. And so, this substance, this power that flows through everything, it doesn't have the ability to reason. So when you use thoughts like, I don't believe that this is possible, then this spirit, this power, this substance that flows through you as a creative power says, oh, this must not be possible. And it creates that in our outer world. And so it doesn't have the ability to reason. You are the one that has the ability to reason. So you are the one responsible for holding the correct image in your mind and the correct belief for what it is that you want. Now, going on to the next point that she talks about here, everything animate and inanimate is called into existence or outstandingness by a power which itself does not stand out. So this spirit, this power, this substance that's behind everything is not seen. We don't see it. It is, I don't know that this is a great example, but I'll use this example. It's kind of like the wind. You don't see the wind, but you can see its effects. You can see, a tree blowing or whatever. And so the same with this spirit, this power, this substance, you can't see it, but you can see its effects out in the world. You can see when you hold an image in your mind that it produces itself in the physical world. And so she ended off with Paul's words here. The worlds were formed by the word of God. Things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. And so that is true, that this substance which flows through everything, which is an endless substance, creates and goes through your mind to come out into the physical world as your creation. There's nothing unusual or mysterious in the idea of your pictured desire coming into material evidence. It is the working of a universal natural law. So she's saying that this is not happenstance. It's not mystical. It's not mysterious. It's not magical. That this is a orderly following of laws, that the thing that you hold in your mind takes shape in the world around you. The world was projected by the self-contemplation of the universal mind, and this same action is taking place in its individualized branch, which is the mind of man. So remember last lesson, we were talking about how this substance didn't create itself into more stuff. There had to have been a mind that created this substance into something. And she's using universal mind as that larger mind that has created everything that we see in the universe. Now, you could call that universal mind God, you could call it a higher power, you could call it nature, you could call it lots of different things, but in essence, there is something greater than us. There is some mind that is greater than us that created the universe around us and created you. Now, one of the great things about you and I is that this mind created us to be kind of miniaturized versions of itself so that it could create and we can create also. Now, things around us like the plants and the animals, they don't create life around themselves the same way that we do because they don't have the ability to reason. They don't have the ability to hold in their mind those mental pictures through which that spirit can flow and then become the things that they want to create in the world around them. And it's no surprise when you look at the idea that if you look at the animal kingdom doesn't struggle in the sense that it just does what it needs to do. It follows its instincts and it is always successful. Now, it doesn't mean that, there isn't strife, there isn't strain, there isn't struggle as far as, animals running from prey, having to gather food, any of those kinds of things that they do from their day-to-day life, but that they are always successful in it. Now, when you look at us as human beings, we are all over the place. We don't have any central purpose, no central instinct, so no central thing from which we should go towards. We're born into this existence as a blank slate, so to speak, to where we don't know what our true purpose is. We don't know what it is that we should create. And so we have to learn and we have to grow along this journey to grow into the purpose, the creation that we are meant to create. And that once you grow into that and find that purpose for which you were created, and then you create that in your outer world, you find so much fulfillment and you find so much joy. And part of the way that you uncover that is through things like this, studying, opening your mind up to different things. Another way that you can do that is by trying to become conscious of the world around you. And the way that you do that is by realizing that you are not your body. You're not your thoughts and you're not your emotions, but you're that intelligence, that consciousness that is behind all of those things, that is aware and is watching all those things. And the more time that you can spend as being that thing and separating yourself from those things, the more that you can wake that part of yourself up, the more that you can realize that you have power over those other things. And as you gain power over those other things, you start to awaken, and you'll awaken to your purpose. You'll awaken to the thing that this universal mind, this God, created you to be and to act out here in the world. Everything in the world has its beginning in mind and comes into existence in exactly the same manner, from the hat on your head to the boots on your feet. All are projected thoughts solidified. Now, you take a look at animals. Animals, one of the reasons that we know that animals can't picture in their mind and then create in their outer world is that they don't use tools. They don't use things of creating and shaping the world around them. Now, I think that there are two different levels through which we create things around us. We take of the physical thing that's already here and we reshape it into something new. But then also we can take of this spiritual power, this substance that flows through us, and then we can create that out into the world where it becomes something physical without us needing to shape the world around us. Now, the process by which that happens may be that somebody else takes of the physical things of this life and creates something. But there, in our modern day and age, especially in this information age, I think we can understand that there are many things that are created that have no substance. I mean, our very money system is based on that idea that it has no substance. It's just an idea. And so we're able to create these things out of nothingness. Everything in the whole world has its beginning in mind and comes into existence in exactly the same manner, from the hat on your head to the boots on your feet. So she's saying, the hat, that's one form of creation. And as I mentioned, there's also that second form of creation, of creating out of nothingness, just from your thoughts. All are projected thoughts, solidified. Your personal advance in evolution depends upon your right use of the power of visualizing, and your use of it depends on whether you recognize that you yourself are a particular center through and in which the originating spirit is finding ever new expression for potentialities already existing within itself. This is evolution, this continual unfolding of existing, though outwardly invisible things. So the idea that she's expressing here is that whether you know it or not, you are a creative center. You are something through which the world around you is being created. Now, if you know that you are, that you know that you're creating, and you know the process by which these things are created in your mind, then you can use that same process to create what it is that you want. That you don't have to live by circumstance, so to speak, of the environment doing whatever it is doing, and you just having to accept, fate or circumstances or luck, whatever, you might call it. Because when humankind hasn't understood these principles, they've made up terms like that to try to describe, to try to make sense of what's going on around them. Why do these things happen? But the truth is that we create the world that we're experiencing around us. Your mental picture is the force of attraction that evolves and combines the originating substance into specific shape. Your picture is the combining and evolving powerhouse, so to speak, through which the originating creative spirit expressed itself. Its creative action is limitless, without beginning and without end, and always progressive and orderly. It proceeds stage by stage, each stage being a necessary preparation for the one to follow. So she's talking about that you were created by this universal mind, this God, to be an expression of itself, that you could create on its behalf. And because this creative spirit, this creative power is limitless, it's without beginning or end, and it's always progressing, it's always becoming more. That means that you can create whatever it is that you want. You can create, the sky's the limit, and possibly even things that currently don't exist, because she said it proceeds stage by stage, each stage being a necessary preparation for the one to follow. Now, if you look at some of the technologies that we have today, there was a progression, there was a thing that needed to happen along the way for the next thing to come about. You look at something like the, handwriting a letter and sending it by post to somebody else was, the way of communicating across long distances. The next thing that happened was wires were developed, and then those wires were connected and you had the telegraph. Then they, things like the phonograph and other things were developed, and then they combined the phonograph with the telegraph system of the wires, the wires part aspect of it, and then you get the phone systems. And then you have things like the radio, where they found out that they could send messages across great distances without any wires in between. And then you combine the radio, the idea of the radio, with things like the telephone, and then you get things like the cell phone. And so there are permutations and there are things that are probably beyond even what we are experiencing now. We just don't even know it. But it will begin and it will start in the mind of somebody. The cell phone, before it was invented, was something in the mind of somebody. The telephone, all of these inventions were in somebody's mind. They thought it and then they created it into the physical world. So anything is possible. Anything is possible for us to create out in our outer environment. Just because it may have never been done before doesn't mean that it's not possible or that you yourself couldn't do it. Now, one thing that I would put in here, that although, yes, we can create whatever it is that we want, I would suggest that you find out from within yourself what inspires you, what motivates you, what brings you joy, what brings you happiness. And then those are the things that you create in your outer world. Now, you take a look at things like our political system, our government. Are there problems with the way that it's set up? Are there things that could be improved upon? Yes, of course. But should everybody be involved in correcting those problems? Most people talk about them. People are always flapping their mouths and complaining about them, but very few people actually are doing anything to actually correct them. And so if you're not being inspired, if you're not being led, if you're not being put in a position to change those things, what are you being put in a position to do? And I would suggest you focus on those things and leave the rest of the things alone and let those things take care of themselves, so to speak, and let God or this universal mind or this creative spirit work stage by stage in setting these things up to move from one stage to the other. That it's a progression, it's an evolution. All right, last little paragraph that we'll read here, and then we'll end off our study for today. Now let us see if we can get an idea of the different stages by which the things in the world have come to be. Troward says if we can get at the working principle which is producing these results, we can very quickly and easily give it personal application. First, we find that the thought of originating life or spirit about itself is its simple awareness of its own being, and this produced a primary ether, a universal substance out of which everything in the world must grow. I don't think that I really want to go into that. I think we'll leave it there, and I think actually we'll reread that paragraph tomorrow and go into that, because she's kind of going into a new idea there, and we're running short on time for our study for today, and it would take me too long to kind of go into and create a foundation for going into what she's saying there. So we'll leave it there for now. But remember that you are a creative center, and out of what you hold in your mind, you are creating the world around you. And so pay attention, be aware of the thoughts that you're thinking, be aware of the actions that you're taking in your outer world. And if those actions, those thoughts aren't conducive to creating what it is that you want to create, change them. Change it to what it is that you do want. And once you change it to what you do want, you have that uplifted emotion and you take action that are in alignment with those things, you'll start to create wonderful things out in your world. You'll start to create the world that you want, and you'll experience happiness and joy that you never thought possible. So with that thought, we'll end it off. Today's Saturday, and so we won't have a study call tomorrow. So we'll pick it back up on Monday. So we'll see you all Monday morning. Bye for now.